fellow citizens, residents, visitors, and well-wishers of the Commonwealth of Dominica, I greet you this evening in the spirit of love, peace, respect, and admiration. It is just a month to the day that Tropical Storm Erica dumped 13 inches of persistent rainfall on Dominica. It is just over a month to the day that many of us lost family, friends, and earthly possessions. It is just a month to the day that we took a last glimpse of the Dominica that was, and just over a month to the day that we embarked on rebuilding the Dominica that will be. In that regard, I am both humbled and delighted to proclaim what a difference a month has made. I drove around this island last weekend and observed objectively the strides that had been made. We are nowhere near back to normal in terms of physical infrastructure, but the spirits of our people have been lifted. The resolve to rebuild instilled, and the determination on the part of many, such as I have never seen before. It is clear to me, therefore, that Tropical Storm Erica will not have succeeded in its attempt to daunt the spirit and the resilience of our people. Dominicans are determined, like never before, to rebuild Dominica. And for this, as your leader, I am inspired and eternally grateful. But it is not just resident Dominicans who are propelling this exercise. Our brothers and sisters in the diaspora have been exemplary. Economies in sister Caribbean states, Europe, and North America are doing no better than ours here in Dominica. But yet, within days, within weeks, and all now, relief supplies have been flowing from Dominicans abroad at a rate and of a quantity that we have never seen before. Dominicans abroad love this country. Dominicans abroad love and care for their families and friends back home. We are proud and honored to have such a focused and committed army of compatriots who did not need to be told a second time that help is needed in the homeland. The regional international community has been there for us, ladies and gentlemen. We have been treated not as mendicants, but as deserving beneficiaries of kindness in the midst of a national tragedy. No instance better typified this than 7:55 last evening when I sat in my living room and watched on television 78-year-old Sir Garfield Sobers walk onto the field of play at the Kensington Oval to hand over the coin that eventually was spun for the start of the celebrity cricket match in Dominica's honor. What a touching moment it was. I do not know whether $1, $100, or $100,000 was generated from that effort. What shall remain forever etched in my mind is the look of genuine concern and brotherly love on the faces of all concerned for Dominica and the people of this beautiful island. Dollars and cents are crucial to the physical rebuilding exercise here in Dominica. But the love and compassion we have seen exhibited by our Caribbean brothers and sisters, by rescue and relief teams of friendly nations, and by donor governments and agencies is absolutely priceless. We have been assisted, but more importantly to me, we have been assisted with dignity. I take this opportunity, therefore, on behalf of the citizens and friends resident on Dominica, to thank all who have assisted in whatever way with the national relief effort that was launched on the morning of August 28, 2015. We are still very much in need of your support and assistance, but please know that we very much appreciate the love and warmth we have felt as a result of your giving in a manner that said, we are with you as brothers and sisters in this moment of tragedy. This brings me to the question, ladies and gentlemen, of just where we are 32 days later. The short answer is, we are on the road to recovery. Dominica has bounced back miraculously. Tonight, commercial activity at the air and seaports has resumed to a satisfactory level. Anyone wishing to visit Dominica can hop aboard a private or commercial air or sea craft and arrive here safely and with no need to fear. Cargo and other goods destined for Dominica are once again arriving on a scheduled basis. This, however, does not take away from the Herculean task confronting us in terms of effectively re-outfitting Douglas Church Airport in particular. While landings and takeoffs are permissible and encouraged, that is about all that is realistically in order at the airport at this time. As Minister for Finance, I shudder to think what the final reconstruction, retrofitting, and re-outfitting costs will be, as in effect, we have to replace and upgrade 90% of what was there, and focus also on minimizing the probability of a reoccurrence of such destruction in the event of future bad weather. Nonetheless, Douglas Charles is now open for business and has already facilitated the arrival and departure of thousands since resumption of scheduled and charter services. In the area of electricity, Dominica has been superb. The restoration of service to 99% of its customer base. 73.5% of 35,963 customers were affected by Tropical Storm Erika. The transmission and distribution restoration process concluded on September 8, 2015. The generation restoration process continues, but tonight, only those areas evacuated or that are very hard, indeed nigh impossible to reach, are without electricity service. The assessment undertaken to date revealed that the cost associated with Tropical Storm Erika's damage to Dominica's equipment and infrastructure is EC $5,980,000. In the area of water, in the now immortal words of William Shakespeare, this was the unkindest cut of all. Dominica is known for the supply in abundance of quality drinking water to all corners of the island. However, all of the 44 systems for potable water and the 3 centralized sewage systems were impacted by Tropical Storm Erika. The damages were of varying degrees and can be summarized as follows. 1, blockages at intakes with large boulders and high levels of silt from land slippage. 2, concrete infrastructure of intakes destroyed. 3, pipes broken and several lengths of various sizes completely destroyed across the island. 4, access roads to intake and storage facilities, as well as pipe routes, completely washed away. 5, pipelines exposed and undermined in several areas, especially on the newly completed West Coast and the ongoing Bells, Penrise, Sylvania, Layupak projects. 6. Pipe support broken and many carried away by rivers. 7. Changing course of many rivers, diverting them away from the intake structures. Assessment reports put total damage in excess of EC $50 million. This is what DOASCO now needs to fully restore and safeguard its operation. Temporary restoration of the water systems began the day following Tropical Storm Erica. Areas north of Portsmouth and the town of Portsmouth were the first to be restored, followed by the areas of Point Michel and Louviers. As I speak to you, restoration works are still ongoing in the areas of Pichelin, Granby, Wesley, Woodfordale, Marigot, Girondel, Dublin, Bioche, Coulibestry, and Bacatel, Fonseja, and Fab. These restorations are still temporary, and it must be noted that the systems are very vulnerable to even mild weather conditions. Due to the magnitude of the damage and the time taken to restore water in many communities, the use of portable rubber storage tanks had to be advanced. A total of 20 collapsible tanks have been provided by the Japanese Technical Cooperation, JICA, while DOASCO purchased a further 9 tanks, all of which have been deployed in various communities and fields using both private trucks as well as DOASCOs. These tanks were installed at schools and areas where the water supply is not yet restored. The Red Cross also provided assistance by installing a temporary water filtration plant in the community of Coulibestry with a production capacity of 29,000 gallons daily. DOASCO has 2 water trucks with capacity of 1,000 and 2,000 gallons respectively. DOASCO has also been using the services of 4 private water trucks. These trucks are assigned to deliver water to the communities where the water supply is not yet restored on a daily basis. Works done to restore water to communities to date amounts to $3,982,637.50, with an amount of $1,600,000 estimated to repair damages to the ongoing works on the new Bells, Penrise, Sylvania, Layupak project, taking the amount of funds urgently required for these temporary repairs to $5,582,637.50. DOASCO's engineers have, however, prepared preliminary estimates to determine the amount of resources required to replace all damaged systems and build a greater level of climate resiliency, and has determined this cost to be in excess of $50,327,050. Now I know there are still many areas without water. This operation is very dynamic, and its success relies on variables other than desire and intent. However, I have sought and received provisional resumption dates, which I stress should serve as a mere guide to residents as to when normal service is projected to be restored. Wesley, Woodfordale, Marigot, October 5th. Pichelin, Granby, October 10. Bacatel, Fonseja, October 17. Girondel, Egliston, Upper Kingsale, Reigate, October 24th. Collyho, Dublin, Bioche, Coulibestry, October 3rd. Another area of great challenge is that of shelter for those worst affected by the weather system. Currently, there are 322 persons in 9 designated shelters across Dominica. Arrangements have been made to relocate 130 persons, or 46 families, currently at the Dominica Grammar School, and 4 families at the Roosevelt Youth Center to temporary housing at Springfield Guest House, Kent Anthony Guest House, Mr. Clean Guest House, and St. Amy's Guest House. It is expected that all the Pitti-Savan residents currently residing at the shelters will be given priority to move to new housing accommodations by tomorrow, Wednesday, 30th September. Another component of the relocation process is the transfer of 17 persons housed at the Roseau Primary School to be accommodated at the Roseau Youth Center. This will provide for the prompt reopening of that school to the nation's children. Generally speaking, ladies and gentlemen, Dominica faces a housing resettlement program of monumental proportions. Based on the field assessments to date, coupled with information from the Central Statistics Office, over 890 homes have been destroyed or are uninhabitable due to the imminent risk of further destruction. The cost of resettlement, reconstruction, and repairs to these homes, housing a total of 4,229 individuals, is at a staggering EC $91,194,819, or United States dollars $33,565,762. To date, several possible housing solution scenarios have been examined, and we are taking them all on board as we fully appreciate the urgency of the need to have families resettled in as permanent and comfortable a setting as possible. We are indeed grateful to the government of Venezuela for the prompt commitment and commenced delivery of 300 Petrocasa houses. Officials are now working feverishly to finalize plans for the siting of these units, with the Jubic area being the first targeted for 50 such units. The government is also in negotiation with several governments, donor agencies, and private developers in Dominica and abroad to formulate various designs and methodologies for long-term housing solutions in community-type settings. $91 million, ladies and gentlemen, is a lot of money. And the government, quite frankly, does not have it. We are determined, nonetheless, to negotiate the best possible terms for securing assistance through grants, loans, and joint venture arrangements to effect a major housing resettlement and reconstruction program across the length and breadth of Dominica. I wish to stress that this is not a case of government giving people a house. The most vulnerable and the least likely to afford shall be assisted to the extent of granted deed. But the thinking overall is that we shall negotiate the most generous terms for working and able-bodied persons to be afforded access to units that they can secure mortgages to acquire, or which can be entered into a rent-to-own program. Ladies and gentlemen, in the area of which little has been said, but which nonetheless suffered severe damage as a result of the storm, is agriculture and agro-processing. Here, the destruction wrought against 2 of the leading agro-processing enterprises in Dominica is noteworthy. The complete wipeout of the Bay Oil Distillery in Pitti-Savan and the bay leaf crop in the farming areas of that community was a telling blow for Dominica's longest-serving farming organization, the Dominica Essential Oils and Spices Cooperative. Shillingford Estates, Macclesfield Rum Distillery, with 50 acres of sugarcane and other food crops, the rum factory, including the warehouse, bottling plant, and other facilities, copra house, machinery, tools, and equipment were inundated by floods, mud, and debris from the Macushri River. Total damage caused by Erica to Shillingford estates is estimated at $4.9 million. Of note is that Shillingford Estates Macushri served to employ many of the residents of neighboring communities, as well as members of the resident Haitian community, some of whom resided and farmed on the estate. The Dominica coconut products, one of our major exporters and earner of foreign exchange, suffered significant damage and loss that no doubt will have a major impact on our economy. In addition to the employment of residents of Petite Savanne, Dalis, Whitaker, and Lapland areas, the Jungle Bay Resort and the Rosalie Bay Resort, which are privately owned tourism facilities, suffered substantial losses for the passage of Erica. The damage to the Jungle Bay Resort, which lost 32 out of 35 cottages, is estimated at $27 million and has virtually destroyed the resort. Damage to the Rosalie Bay Resort is estimated at $4 million. Both resorts were integral to the utilization of fresh produce, fish, and other agricultural-based products produced in the adjacent farming communities. There were also several tourism facilities and properties that were impacted by Tropical Storm Erica. In respect to agriculture and fisheries, farming families and the fisher folk were both subject to significant loss of livelihood assets. On the one hand, many experienced losses of crops, livestock, land, in some cases fishing boats and engines, nets, fishing gear, and fish pots. On the other hand, their homes were damaged or destroyed, farm vehicles were destroyed or damaged, and small-scale, rural-based cottage industries and agribusinesses were also terminated. Example, coconut oil, roasted corn, and plantain. In many cases, losses were sustained in both livelihood assets and households. These represent the most vulnerable group for consideration in the recovery process. Reports from hucksters indicate losses due to their temporary inability to transport fresh produce on hand to ports for export. Farmers with crops ready for harvest and market were also confronted with the problem of farm access. Livestock producers with animals ready for slaughter are also faced with the problem of moving their product to markets. Residents of the worst affected communities adopted the coping mechanism of slaughtering animals for immediate consumption, with some smoking of meats to preserve the product. Crops are also being harvested for consumption in the affected communities. Vendors involved in the sale of fresh produce and fish also suffered loss of products on hand and temporary unavailability of facilities for vending. Farmlands in all agricultural regions were subjected to high levels of precipitation, resulting in the actual loss of farmland due to landslides in some areas. In such areas, a high level of landslide risk remains, despite which landholders continue farming activities on adjacent lands. Farmlands were also subject to high levels of leaching and soil erosion and the consequent reduction in soil fertility. Farm access roads, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to the challenge posed by the damage to primary roads, estimated at $624.7 million, farmers also have to contend with the damage and destruction of feeder roads and farm access roads, some of which have been rendered impassable by fallen trees, landslides, and erosion. This has major implications for the movement of fresh produce from farm to markets and the movement of inputs to the farms. The impact of area destruction of tree crops, banana, plantain, root crop, and vegetable cultivations, principally as a result of flooding and landslide, was severe. Losses to the crop sector are estimated at over $10 million. The destruction of livestock and associated housing was a prominent feature of this disaster. Deaths in cattle, sheep, goats, rabbits, poultry, and pigs have been reported and places preliminary estimates of livestock losses at over $600,000. In addition, livestock farmers in several areas are faced with farm access road problems, which are hampering the provision of feed and water for livestock. This situation is urgent and requires immediate remedial action. Several beehives were also destroyed by tropical storm. Up to 149 fishers and one cooperative have reported loss and damage to the equipment as a result of Tropical Storm Erika, whilst 270 fish pots accounted for the largest quantity of reported loss by fisherfolk. Significant losses in terms of 100 fishing boats and 97 engines were recorded, which are substantially higher in terms of dollar value. There was also damage to 9 boat sheds and substantial loss of fishing gear and equipment, which includes items such as fishing tackle, floats, weighing scales, rope, and fish pot wire. Damage to the fisheries sector is estimated at $2.6 million. Aquaculture farms also sustained damage from flooding by nearby rivers. Erika caused major damage to Dominica's rainforests and severely impacted the country's national park and forest reserves. This can be readily seen from the massive landslides and consequent loss of land and natural vegetation in forested areas. Rivers across the country have also been left with tons of silt, mud, and debris along and within the riverbeds, which does not augur well for river life nor coastal fishery. Limited access to forested areas has not allowed for a complete assessment of the damage to the forest. Similarly, current limitations do not allow for an assessment of the damage to coastal fishery from the tons of silt and debris deposited along the coastline as a result of the storm. In summary, I am hoping to sit with Minister Drago and officials in the Ministry of Agriculture next week to determine how best we can go about easing the load on the backs of farmers, fishers, and their respective families. The issue of insurance monies will arise, but I'm aware that much of the infrastructural problems fall squarely on the shoulders of government and will have to be tackled by the state. Ladies and gentlemen, if ever there was a need for us to rally around the farming community and purchase the produce, the perfect timing for such is now. If farmers cannot get to market, then let us seek out the farmers and support their enterprises, as their livelihoods, their families, and employees depend on this. The tourism sector is fighting back admirably back to its feet. Several hotels across the island are now up and running and reopened for business. I will deal with the issue of reconstruction and realistic governmental intervention later in this address, but it is my sincere hope that insurance companies will hasten their strides in the assessments and determination of compensation packages for tourism-related properties impacted by this disaster. Of critical interest and concern to all is the progress of work on our highways. A 2007 European Union-funded road survey assessment reveals that Dominica has 320 kilometers of main road and 338.5 kilometers of farm access roads. Following the impact of Tropical Storm Erica, a significant percentage of the island's main road was affected, making vehicular access in those areas impossible. Through the diligence and hard work of several equipment owners and operators island-wide, the Ministry of Public Works and Ports can report that to date, 93.7% of the island's main road, representing 300 kilometers, is motorable. Of the 320 kilometers of main road, only the section of road from the Bay Oil Factory at Pilit-Savan to the Dominica River Gorge remains closed to full motor vehicular traffic. The Ministry of Agriculture has undertaken a preliminary assessment of feeder roads, with several sections of these roads remaining inaccessible. The Ministry of Public Works has commenced the assessments of these feeder roads and will collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture on priority areas for attention. First phase of the response measures will entail the clearing of roadway within major productive areas. Following the impact of Tropical Storm Erica, 3 main bridges along the west coast were destroyed. Shortly thereafter, the government received 101 meters of Bailey bridges from the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Works on the 3 major Bailey bridges bypasses at Pointrong, Batali, and Makushri have commenced. Each bridge structure measures 18 meters in length and 9 meters in width. Progress on these bridges are at varied levels of completion, and updates are as follows. Pointrong, already commissioned, meaning vehicles are driving on this bridge as we speak. Batali, to be commissioned tomorrow, September 30th. Makushri, to be commissioned no later than October 5th, 2015. The 3 bridges along the west coast represent a total length of 54 meters, with 47 meters of Bailey Bridge left to be constructed along critically affected areas. The construction of the Bailey structure at the site of the Dominica River Gorge remains a major priority of the government of Dominica. Contract work documents to undertake the construction of the Bailey structure at Dominica is expected to be signed very shortly. In brief, therefore, fellow Dominicans, visitors and friends, on Friday, 25th September 2015, the government received a draft assessment report which was undertaken by the team led by the World Bank and which included development partners and agencies such as the Caribbean Development Bank, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the UNDP, PAHO, FAO, World Food Programme, OACS Commission, and the University of the West Indies. The draft report estimates damages, losses, and costs to rebuild infrastructure at EC $1.298 billion, or US $482.84 million United States dollars. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, began a mission on 25th September 2015. During that mission, the macroeconomic framework will be reviewed and updated. The mission will assist government in preparing a framework that will take into account the significant level of investment that government must make and establish a plan that will guide fiscal operations. As far as direct relief and assistance is concerned, to date, government records cash receipts totaling $13.02 million. This includes $5.69 million at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and $7.3 million at the National Bank of Dominica. The balance of the National Bank of Dominica includes the sum of $6.5 million, which was received as payout from the Catastrophe Risk Insurance Fund. Government has started receiving claims from teams of people and contractors who provided services in the days immediately following the passage of the storm. So far, claims amounting to about $1.8 million have been received, but the figure is expected to rise to as much as $12 million. As could be expected, citizens, residents and friends, government revenues are down. Expenditures are on the rise, and revenues have fallen considerably. Just to give you an example of the impact of this disaster, VAT revenues for the month of August were $10.3 million. For September, VAT revenues, originally projected at $11.4 million, stood today, 2 days before the end of the month, at $4.2 million, a shortfall of in excess of $7 million. And that scenario is replicated across government's revenue stream. It is for this reason, therefore, that I wish to appeal to private sector leaders in particular to be realistic with the demands on government over the course of the next few weeks, months, and even years. I am already in receipt of some mind-boggling requests for tax waivers and concessions that, were they to be granted, would effectively bankrupt and shut down this economy of Dominica. The government, my dear people, cannot make blood out of stone. I referenced earlier to the impact of the storm on our productive sectors, namely agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing. If production, and by extension revenues, are down, then the government cannot realistically be in a position to grant across-the-board tax and duty waivers to all and sundry. If the government of Dominica is soliciting support, ultimately from taxpayers in other countries, then it cannot be seen to be granting tax waivers and concessions willy-nilly. I understand the impact of the storm on all sectors, and as a government, we will try, however possible, to assist those hardest hit, as well as those with the potential and capacity to, in turn, rebuild and rebound, to generate much needed revenue for the country. But we cannot at this time just do away with taxes and impositions on key sectors, because we still have to find $1.2 billion to restore this country to its pristine beauty. We also cannot open the floodgates on duty waivers and concessions. I wish this evening, therefore, to applaud all Dominicans for the great effort and the enormous strides we have made as a people over the last 4 weeks in restoring this country to a functional state. The road ahead is long and indeed winding, but I am not daunted. I am certainly not daunted by the task ahead. In a couple of days, entertainers from across the region and the world will be gathering in Barbados for a major fundraising concert in support of storm relief efforts in Dominica. This tells me that our brothers and sisters from sister nations are still very much in support of our efforts. They believe in us and they wish for us to succeed. Our brothers and sisters in the diaspora have been unrelenting in their contributions, their expressions of solidarity and support, and their continued pledges of assistance, however and wherever they can. My dear Dominicans living at home, we have as a people to make this happen. We have to put greed and selfishness aside. We have to spurn the thought of partisan political considerations. I have deliberately made no reference to certain tenuous issues because I do not believe it makes sense to fan the flames of discord or disunity at this time. I shall remain focused on the positives. There is a national cause to which we are called upon to enjoin. I have to date enjoyed the fullest cooperation of all stakeholders. I wish for this to continue. My plea this evening, therefore, is that we build on the last 32 days towards the next 32, at which time we will be celebrating our 37th anniversary of national independence. I hope by then to be able to report on continued rapid improvements in the quality and standard of living of our people. I hope by then that all communities in Dominica would once again be joined physically and accessible by motorized traffic. I hope by then we would have made a serious dent in the number of persons living in shelters and those having to reside with family and friends. I am confident, citizens and residents, that the rate and pace of recovery will intensify in the weeks ahead. I am hopeful that our international relief appeal effort will intensify and continue to bear fruit. Dominica needs $1.2 billion to rebuild. We cannot generate such funds on our own. We need the continued support of the international community. I will personally be embarking on a hectic overseas travel and speaking itinerary to drum up support for that effort. On behalf of the Cabinet of Ministers, I wish to express our profound thanks and appreciation to all who have given selflessly to the cause of restoration and reconstruction in Dominica. I thank the donors. I thank the public officers. I thank the private sector. I thank my 20 fellow parliamentarians, all of whom have worked diligently to ease the pain and discomfort of our people. Dominica is admired by many this evening. We have fought valiantly. I urge all within the hearing of my voice to redouble efforts in the weeks ahead, to work hard at making Dominica the best it can be, first for independence and later for Christmas 2015. Let us each continue to be our brother's keeper, and let us all continue to believe in the Almighty God and His plan for this beloved country of ours. May God continue to bless you all. May God bless this beautiful country, Dominica. I thank you. God bless you.